as you're taking challenges on, you're trying to achieve greatness anywhere. It's the teeter-totter of life, man. And I think that you have to continue to move those pieces from basket to basket to basket and make sure that all of those things in your life understand that life is always going to be out of balance. And sometimes you're going to take the heavier load of that, and other times it will be the lighter side of that.
This is the Own It Show, where we tell stories of how everyday people made ownership theirs.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Rothling-Schofer. And if you guys are new here, be sure to check everything out because we got about 185 episodes and counting, really helping you take full ownership of your life. And when we talk about ownership, what does that really mean? Every single guest that comes on here, we've been able to ultimately give you a different definition of it. But at the end of the day, ownership is taking responsibility with accountability for where you want to go, because the life that you want is just on the other side of that decision that you may or may not have made yet. And so today, as we dive in, as you listen to this conversation, if this is something that serves you, if it's something that speaks to you, if it's something that resonates, I just ask that you share it with somebody, post it to social media, and we will engage with you. Put a comment or a rating on this podcast as well, so that we can reach more people. And that's the way that we ultimately are able to touch more people, serve more people, and get this message in front of those that have a calling, that have something in their life that they're meant to be world-class at and share just like you. So today we're diving in, and I'm really excited about today's guest because when we talk about an abundant life and living holistic in every way, shape, and form, from your family to your fitness, to your health, to your finances, to your business, it sometimes becomes really hard to fit all these puzzle pieces together. And I was on a call with a client the other day, and he literally goes, Justin, I'm really starting to get pressed for time. I'm in a really high pressure situation at the office, and I actually want to cut back on some of the health stuff I'm doing. And this wasn't a guy who was doing 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes a day in phone conversations on health. It wasn't a guy that had all of his habits dialed in. It was that he was, again, going back to old patterns, old habits of trading health for business, trading health for money, trading health for success. And that mindset, that habit shift that we have to get to, is something that just cripples so many people. And our guest today, AJ, has just done an amazing job in, I think, finding that rhythm within himself, and ultimately being able to share it with others. So without further ado, AJ, it's been so great to learn about you, not only in your success in the real estate game, but in as a bank owner, and then ultimately now starting a business called Drugstore to Door, and all while doing it with a big family. And so I'm really excited to bring you on and chat deeper into understanding your way of living, your way of life, your story, your journey, and how you've ultimately leaned into this level of ownership.
All right, glad to be here, and I hope I can bring some value to you. We'll dig into every little piece of it necessary, and happy to share anything and everything, man. I'm a pretty open book here.
I love it. So AJ, when you started and you really kind of got into this, what was that like? I look at your bio, and it's so much so when you get like a bio sometimes and you're just looking, it's like, okay, did this. It's like one of those things: a licensed doctor of pharmacy, owner of multiple pharmacies, successful real estate investor, bank owner, father, entrepreneur, CEO, founder of Drugstore to Door. And like there's so many things here. And what was your journey, or what was your step into this? What was this moment that was like, hey, I want to do this, going from wherever you were in college to saying, hey, this is my first step into thing number one?
Yeah, it's a pretty funny kind of convoluted path. There's a few pivotal moments in my life that kind of shaped the I call them like the little flips of the switches that are like, aha, like I got to go down this road. I got to do this thing, or I see an opportunity there. And the first one was, man, actually wrapped around fitness. I was a little fat kid. Hated it the whole time I was growing up. And at the age of about 13, 14 years old. We had some family friends that were starting a new little fitness, called a training studio, maybe at the time. And they wanted some candidates to come try. I was like a 235-pound 14-year-old. I mean, I was chunky. I wore it well, but I wore it all over, man. And so, and I hated it, but I just didn't have the tools, like I didn't know, what do I need to do to get out of this? And so when they did that, I was like, sign me up. Like, please sign me up. I'll do whatever it takes, man. They taught me how to grocery shop at 14 years old to buy the right stuff, taught me how to exercise, like all of the stuff at the time that was kind of the going thing to be healthy. And then that summer, I dropped like 50 pounds and a ton of light switches went off, right? Like, what happens when you get the right tools? What happens when you put your own motivation and bring consistency to the table? Like, how much of your life do you get in control of? And then what happens in general, as sad and shallow as that is in life, what happens in general when you fundamentally change your look, your feel, your attitude, your all of those things, and you go out into society? How does society reciprocate that? So that was like that first pivotal moment for me to realize like how much control there actually is if you get in the driver's seat, and not be afraid to go out there and ask for help in areas where you need help because you may not be the expert yet, right? And that led to a whole career and path in personal training and me helping other people, and got into bodybuilding and all that other stuff through college, took me down the health field route, all of those things. But that was one of those key moments. And then another big one for me was, lost a handful of family members to disease, cancers, other things early in life. Lost my best friend to a tragic accident in start of college. And that was another like flip of the switch. Like, man, life is short. Life is fragile. Don't take it lightly, and take it lightly. And so, that really changed my mindset around the fear of, what if I fail at this? Or what if this doesn't go my way? Or, everyone else is doing this. What if I do that? That really changed all of that for me. Almost like a who gives a what? Like I'm going to go out here and just go for it, man, because tomorrow might be my last day. So who cares, And so as those things started to stack, it was this cumulative thing that really changed the landscape for me. And then motivated like everyone else is, right? Like the guy who got me into pharmacy. This is the guy who was rolling up in exotic cars, and a young cat who owned all of these, pharmacies at the time, and kind of opened my eyes because I thought I was going to go down a different road. I grew up in a household. My dad was Persian, man. It was like, you got three options. You can be a doctor, or a doctor. You choose, but it's completely up to you. Like, that's the household that I grew up in. And so I was very much in one of those lanes trying to figure things out, but I was always hungry for business. There was some weird thing in my brain. I was just hungry for business. So when I met this cat in pharmacy, it was the shallow stuff that got me. I was like, damn, man, this guy's on a golf course. I'm terrible at golfing, by the way, but this guy's on the golf course. He's driving exotic cars. He's got plasmas in his house when they're 40,000 a pop. Like, I was like, what is going on here, man? So then I took that road down pharmacy. So those were kind of some of the big key moments. There's a lot of stuff intertwined in there, but those are some of those big ones where you go, man, I felt the shift, with each of those pieces of my life.
As you started to pull all of this together, and as you started to get deeper into business, you started to get deeper into some of the serious natures, starting your own businesses, starting families. Where did you start to feel tugs that you needed to spend more time in certain areas? Where did you start to feel conflict?
Boy, that's every day. So as you're taking challenges on, and you're trying to achieve greatness anywhere, it's the teeter-totter of life, man. And I think that you have to continue to move, those pieces from basket to basket to basket, and make sure that all of those things in your life understand that life is always going to be out of balance. And sometimes you're going to take the heavier load of that, and other times it will be the lighter side of that. And you just have to understand this is the journey. This is the roller coaster ride. But it's also recognizing when you're out of balance. You'll never hear me sit up here and say, there's a balance and here's the formula. I need someone else to help me there because I have not figured out that formula. But the thing I do recognize is I'm out of balance and I've put a lot over here and I need to move some back over here. It's not going to put me back in balance, but I'm not going to be so far tilted where everything else starts to slide and fall off. Right. And so that's, if we want to say balance, that's as close to balance as I believe somebody could actually get.
Yeah. I always like to say it's not about balance, but it's about rhythm. And life has a rhythm in every way, shape, and form. And we all know what it's like to listen to music, where we get into a room, someone gets onto the piano and the drums, or maybe we're in church service, or we're listening to something in our vehicle, and the rhythm just works. Like it just feels good, and you like to listen to it, and it draws you in. And then we also know what it feels like when the rhythms don't blend together. They don't sound good. It's like, oh my gosh, somebody shut that off, change the channel, change the station, get rid of this. Like, this is awful. It's much like life, where we have these rhythms where really things are starting to work. And I think the hardest thing that people have is they are so unaware of these rhythms. And when you are unaware of these rhythms, you don't know whether something's working or something's not working. And what I've started to teach people and started to really guide people on is to have hyper awareness, to make a list called like the when life is working list. What time are you waking up? What time are you going to bed? What's your fitness routine like? What's the time spent with your significant other? What's the time spent with your kids? What's what are you focused on in your business? How's your investment life working? How are these things all interacting? And when you can start to pinpoint these ideas and these things, these actions that you're starting to implement or do during this positive rhythm time in your life, when life is working, it can start to create your formula. It can start to create your equation as to what does that look like for you? What does that look like at any given point in time? And the moment something starts to slip, maybe you start to feel anxiety, maybe you start to feel that inner tug, maybe you start to feel that inner conflict pulling you in one direction or the other, it helps us go back to that when life is working list. And so hearing that, I'm curious, what would you say is on your when life is working list that you're adhering to, that you're doing consistently, that you're really hitting on, that allows you to enable these priorities to be forefront so that you can feel that positive rhythm?
Absolutely. It starts with self. That for me, there's no question. From the time I was that fat kid till now, the longest span I've ever taken off of being physically active was maybe 2 weeks, and I'm a 40-year-old man now. So that's a lot of time where I've stayed really consistent. And has my diet slipped in those time frames? Yes. Have I vacation indulged too much? Yes. But the one constant is always going back to doing physical activity for me. And, I have a lot of people ask me, like, how do you deal with the stress or the anxiety, or how do you have so many irons in the fire all the time? And, the thing I'll tell you is, even from a medical perspective, what that physical activity does for you, not just physically, but mentally, is an absolute game changer. And I would never trade that for another option. I schedule it into my life. Like, it is a part of my schedule. It is the meeting that has to take place for all other things to work well. And even if everything else is off, it is always the constant that's there, because you can rebuild from that place to get everything else back into that rhythm you talk about.
It's so true. I often say, show me your calendar, I'll show you your priorities. There's a lot of people that say, yes, I value my health. This is something I like really I'm just fully on board with, but yet I'm like, okay, great. When's the last time we've planned a meal? When's the last time we've cooked at home? When's the last time we've gone to the gym? And they're like, they'll hum and haw. And then I'll say, let's open up the calendar. Let's take a look at it. And from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m, it's scheduled out with nothing for time for themselves, nothing that serves themselves, nothing from a workout to a meal at home, to a meal with the family, to a date night, to you name it. And it's no wonder we can't get into a rhythm. It's no wonder we can't find a moment to have life working because we haven't even given ourselves an opportunity to get our head above water.
Right. Or people just go way too nuts out of the gate, right? They go from I've never worked out in my life to I'm going to do 6 days a week. And it's like, come on, let's not smoke crack here. Let's go 2 days or 3 days and let's build. For me, 5-6 days a week is normal. If I'm not hitting something 5-6 days a week, but I've been doing it for a very long time, And so it's like, man, 20 minutes will make a difference. Just go out and walk for 20 minutes, clear your head. You can fit that in, I guarantee you I can pull your phone out and look at time spent on social apps, and I can carve out easy time to fit a 20-minute walk in any day of the week.
You strive for a level of excellence and a level of mastery that very few people strive for. And I think we've found, just working with thousands of people, having hundreds of conversations with people like you, there's an acceptance of mediocrity in our culture that has begun to hold us back from really getting to where we want to go. And there's this almost like epidemic of good enough, where you've got a pain point, right? You talk about this overweight kid that wanted to really change the way that he was operating and change how he was feeling. And so you took action and you started to move forward. And not only did you move forward to where, hey, I'm starting to feel good, but you continued to keep that fire burning inside so that it drove you to a state of excellence. It drove you to a habit. But that state of mediocrity gets really scary, because there's what's happened with people is we've gone from that pain point to taking action to where we're far enough away from that pain point that it's good enough, and that we stop because it doesn't mean anything to us. It's not really that burning desire. And we just toggle now back into where there's another pain point, maybe 2 years later or 3 years later, that now drives us again to take action. And we toggle in this area of mediocrity and this area of good enough that I think has just become so pervasive in our culture. What would you say has been able to help you be that 1%er that's taken that mediocrity and good enough curse and turned it into something of, hey, I'm a champion. I'm going to take this. I'm going to take ownership here, and I'm going to lean into the state of excellence that I know I was built and created for?
Yeah. So one of the big drivers is fear of returning to exactly what you're saying. And so, and not fear like, oh my gosh, it keeps me up at night, but it's enough in there to say, I will never go backwards. I will only go forward. And if I don't spend a day working on the forward, it's a guaranteed day of backward movement, right? And so in some way, shape, or form, some days it's massive wins. Other days it's just a small chipping game, right? It's accumulation of chipping and chipping and chipping and chipping and chipping. And some days that does feel like you're moving backwards. But when the effort is there every day, and for me, there's a little drive of that fear of not moving in the wrong direction, man, that keeps me hungry amongst a bunch of other things. But I would say that sits at the core of not letting things slip. And it's not fear of failure or fear of I've made this much progress. Why would I ever take it back off the table to have to do again? And look, even in fitness, I've gone up in weight. I mean, I love my chocolate chip cookies just like everybody else does. You know what I mean? And hamburgers and pizza, and holidays hit. I fluctuated. So I know what it feels like to kind of feel like you're going backwards. But every day I still consistently worked out. So as soon as I started making the change of what's going in my mouth, obviously the physical changes and the mental changes and your sleeping changes, and all of those things change when you revert or change those habits. But I never quit the game of chipping. Like, no matter what's going on, I keep the game of chipping going on.
That's good. I like that concept, or that analogy of chipping. Takes me back to the interview they did with Michelangelo, and they said, Michelangelo, how did you ever create David? And he goes, David was always in that slab of marble. I just had to chip away everything that wasn't David. And so it's the same thing with us, is we have to continue to chip away at these little habits, these little behaviors, these little action steps that are not going to get us to where we want to go. But I think before we even know where we want to go, we have to know who we want to become. We have to know what's at the end of that road. And when I say end of that road, don't think that you ever arrive, because you're constantly trying to become something greater. However, it's what is at the other end. Matthew McConaughey, I love this quote. He goes, somebody asked him who he looks up to. And he said, to be honest with you, it's myself in 5 years. And it's myself in 5 years, myself in 5 years, myself in 5 years, myself in 5 years. You never get to that point. You never become your own hero, because you're constantly striving for that person and who you're becoming. And I just love that visual, kind of coming back to exactly what you were talking about with the chipping away.
Yeah, and I think it's key not to tie happiness to that, because you watch people punt happiness, and we all get in that game. And I mean, I love it. I think kind of the same opposite direction. I always think 5 years from now, I want that person to look back at this person and go, thanks, brother. Like, thanks for putting in the work. Thanks for doing the thing. Thanks for taking the risk. And I want to be sure that version, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, looks back and is thankful for this version and the effort that they put in. It doesn't feel like I failed that future version. And so I look at it a little differently. Same concept, obviously. But the thing you have to learn quickly is, like you said, there's no end. And so you got to find peace in the journey, excitement in the journey. And you also have to know, like, shit's going to come in the journey. Like, there are going to be times you're like, why am I doing this? And then there's other times you know exactly why you're doing it. So once you figure that out and becomes more of a game, if you will, then it's like, okay, man, I expect bad things to happen. I expect great things to happen. I expect nothing to happen. I expect something to happen. And you go through it and you're not surprised by any of it. And you take each day for what it is. And that really changes the need for things to happen fast. I mean, that would be my other gripe with society now, is people think like everything should happen yesterday. It's like, man, it takes a lot of time and energy. The success that you see out there, I don't know many people in my life and my circles that I've dealt with that had overnight success. I just haven't met anyone like that. Yet I see it glamorized constantly, when you're on social and you see these people like, go start your YouTube channel today, you'll have 10 da-da-da. It's like, man, it's not real, And if it is, it's a very slim case,
It's so unique. And kind of where it comes back to is, for me, it's a deep trust in God, knowing that I have to run basically his race, not mine. And when I have that deep knowing that I'm called for something great, I'm here for something great, I have to just continually show up consistently and put the effort in what I'm being called towards, that there will be rewards along the way. There's going to be peaks, there's going to be valleys, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be tests of faith as to how am I leading in and what am I doing? But it's not on my timing, it's on his timing. And anytime I've ever deviated from that, that's when the anxiety hits. That's when the frustration hits. That's when the poor decisions come. That's where the shortcuts ultimately bite me. And it's another learning experience to come back to, hey, just have patience, be willing to just stay in the game, stand firm, stay close, and ultimately realize the gifts that you're about to receive as you continue to go down that journey.
Yeah, that's great. And I always say, even to myself internally, an anxious mind is a distracted mind. A distracted mind misses opportunities, because you get too closed-minded, you get too caught up, and opportunities can be slapping you in the face, but you are too tunnel visioned into where you are in that state of mind that it's very hard to see them. So I always remind myself when I get in that position that there are opportunities that will be missed if I don't find a way to balance that state and get out of it as quickly as possible.
Oh, that's really, really good. I'm curious, AJ, when you sit back and you say, hey, this non-negotiable for me, this is something that's non-negotiable every single day. This is a habit, a behavior, a part of my lifestyle that no matter what, I will not miss. It has allowed me to center myself, create this version of who I am today. What is that habit, behavior, or lifestyle piece for you?
So pre-family, I would say, is the workout piece, no question. Making sure that that was fit in every single day. That's kind of my reset, my mind clearing, my depression relief, anxiety relief, all of those things that may come on solves it. Today, I would say it's family plus that workout. So I start my morning with my kiddo, my wife, and have a cup of coffee and get the day rolling. Then I hit that workout, and then I go jam on all the other things, business that I have in front of me, or whatever life brings me. Outside of the times I have to travel for business, but anytime I am home, that is time that is guaranteed to my family and to myself.
I love that. And those what you would say are non-negotiables in how you start your day and how you get going that really sets you on the path for success.
Yeah, non-negotiables. I'd say once in a great while, there's a meeting that's in a different country where you've got to talk to the family and say, hey, I got this one off. But it's not a regular. I don't leave that piece of my calendar open where I drop things in, and it depends, right, on my work schedule or not work schedule. It's there when as close to 100% of the time as I can make it.
I love it. I love it. When you were creating that, when you were kind of coming up to it, you said there was this shift when you got your when your family became a little bit more prevalent in your life. How would you say you prioritize family? Like if we were to say, what's your priority tree look like? What's priority 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? How would you list that or categorize that for yourself?
Yeah, for me, family is one. And the problem with family being one is you expect family to be there. And it's a very slippery slope. So you have to be cognizant of intentional time with family. So like, for instance, with my daughter, if I'm home, it's every morning and every evening I do bedtime routine with my daughter, right? Like I make sure bath time, bedtime, reading stories, spending time together in the evening, it's carved out. I mean, every single day. And then same with the wife. You mentioned this. It's like you get busy enough and you realize you start slipping when it comes to family. And it's like, we got to put date nights on the calendar. We got to put intentional time on the calendar so that we're giving each other undivided attention. And having a good partner who recognizes when you're slipping, and brings you back into line. Those are all necessary things to keep that. Because a lot of us, like, I love my family, and then you just expect them to be there and support you no matter you're giving them 2 minutes, no minutes, or putting them off till the end of the week. And it's a very unfair way to deal with that number one priority. So when I list them there, it's because it's a constant work in progress to make sure that I carve out the appropriate time for that attention.
I love it. For somebody who lives in what we call ownership so well, what would you say is your definition of ownership?
Keeping promises to yourself. Keeping promises to yourself. Nobody's going to judge you harder than you. And most people don't even care what you're doing, to be honest with you. You screw something up, you give them something to talk about, you win something big, you give them something to talk about. They're always just talking. The person who the largest impact comes to at the end of the day, the person that it matters to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is you. And if you can't trust yourself, that's where we need to start. So to me, that's owning it.
I love it. It's so good. Keeping promises to yourself. It's going back to like so many of these gurus, and they just talk about all these habits you need to put into your life and these action steps that you need to follow, these steps 1, 2, and 3. It really all comes down to, can you say you're going to do something? And can you live up to fulfilling that promise for yourself and building that credibility with yourself? Right. With credibility comes confidence, and with confidence comes consistency, and with consistency comes change. And if we're doing it in any other order, that's when things usually start to fall apart.
Yeah, and there's not ice bath at 4 a.m. and this at 4:30 and read a whole book by 7 o'clock. And everyone has their own blueprint. That stuff drives me bananas when I see it out there. Like, cold showers are great. I love them. Cold plunges are great. I do them. The sauna is fantastic. Guess what? Some days I don't have 45 minutes to dedicate to a true sauna session to really get the health benefits out of it. So guess what? I'm not going to sauna. I'm going to go lift. Did my net worth go down because I didn't hit the sauna? No. Like, so we get tied up in the goofy things, and I see a lot of it. And I'm like, this is cool. Like, check out this person's day. This is a person who's showing you the after grind success life, right? Like, I guarantee you when they were sleeping in their car in a parking lot to get the first thing to happen, they weren't taking an ice bath at 4 a.m. And if they were, it was because they didn't have access to facilities for an appropriate bath, right? So sometimes I think we get lost in it, and we're looking at someone who's now worth $500 million and their lifestyle, and you're the person who's just trying to figure out how to go make your first 100,000, and those are two very different places.
100%. And even, even if we were to talk about people who are at that same place, if you're looking at somebody who's built $1 million business and you're like, hey, I want to be there. I want to continue to keep growing on that. And when you try to mimic somebody else's lifestyle, when you try to be somebody else, you try to find the exact, as you called it, blueprint to what that person did and replace it. It's actually taking you out of who you were called to be, what you were built to be, what your routines, habits, lifestyle were meant to be to allow you to shine. And we have to allow you to take ownership in that and keep those promises to yourself and find what works for you along that way. And if we can time compress and time collapse on the way there, that's ultimately what the guy who's done $1 billion has ultimately done. He's figured out how to time collapse all of this learning into what works for him or her in that journey. Absolutely. I love it. AJ, where can everybody find you? Where can people lean in and learn more about you and what it is that you do and have to offer?
Yeah, you bet. So simplest is just hit my site. It's Agsari, AJASGARI.com. It links out to my social stuff. I've tried to incorporate all things that matter to me social, whether they have a financial return or not. You can find drugstore to door stuff there, how we're doing tech in the independent pharmacy space. You'll find fitness stuff there where I just try to share routines and workouts and just stuff to be out there for people who may need that help to get started. Other things that we're working on, brands we're starting, our pharmacy page with tips and tricks for pharmacy and over-the-counter stuff. That's all listed in there. So you can link out to all the different social medias, follow the things that speak to you, and just kind of tossed it all there in that landing spot.
I love it. So guys, as you go on, our conversation today spurred this story within me. And it was a story that I got told by a pastor probably 6 weeks ago. He loved horses. He was riding his horse. They were going through the forest and the horse had been ridden pretty hard and he was tired. He was exhausted. And they came to this little creek and he prodded him on and he coaxed him along the creek. He got him through the creek. And then as he got to the other side of the creek, there was this hill and there was this big hill and it was straight up. And the only way to get home was to go up over this hill. Well, the horse didn't budge. The horse didn't budge. The horse didn't budge. And as the rider got off the horse, he looked him in the eye and he said, I know you can do it. I believe in you. Trust me. And just had that conversation 2, 3, 4 times. All of a sudden, the horse took 1 step. 2 steps, 3 steps, started going uphill. And this was straight uphill. This horse stumbled, he fell, he got back up, he tripped, was down to an absolute crawl. It almost felt sometimes like it was going to tip backwards. And as he crested the top and he got to the top, all of a sudden, this horse took 3 steps forward and got up on his back 2 legs and just made the beautifulest sound you could ever imagine, celebrating what he had just done. And my question to you guys is, when have you been that horse? When have you been in this area to really believe that you are leaning into what you've been called to do, leaning into where you're wanting to go, knowing that it's not about balance that we're seeking, but it's about a rhythm that will allow you to live that life of abundance that you've been called for, this life that is so giving, this life that is meant for abundance that maybe you've been shying away from because you've been settling for something of mediocrity, something less than what you've been called to. And we have to realize that an anxious mind is a distracted mind, and a distracted mind misses the opportunities to be able to lean in. And so maybe today is your opportunity. Maybe today is that calling. Maybe if that's stirring something inside of you that hey, it's a little uncomfortable, that hits a string in me, that hits something that's calling to me. That's your step to lean in and say, hey, maybe I have to start keeping a couple more promises to myself. Maybe I have to step into ownership so that I can realize the life that I'm willing to live. Remember, guys, success is different. So own your different. And we'll see you guys next week.